good afternoon, everyone. This is Rich Pasqua and Matt Sky
Hi,
from
everybody.
ARC. We are a digital transformation company that help Web 2 and Web 3 technology companies. We help them elevate their companies and their tools and their applications through design, marketing, communications, and much more. Today we have an interesting topic, and Matt and I have been talking about this for the past 2 or 3 days now, and it's the idea of protocols bringing out or ushering in Web3 hardware and through flagship phones. And I think the question here is, how is that going to help adoption? Will it foster mass adoption? And maybe what pitfalls will they see, and what are the pros and the cons of this? So let's just jump right in.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's such an amazing moment in terms of ushering in Web3 adoption, and it takes you away from that purely protocol level, that purely deep developer level, and it's creating a device that's something that average consumers can really take advantage of. I think what's interesting, Rich, just from your perspective, what do you think will be the first types of uses you can imagine someone with a dedicated, I guess what you could call almost a crypto phone? What do you think would be the immediate use cases that people would start to take advantage of?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and as soon as I heard this, my mind went in several different directions, as it usually does.
It's a deep rabbit hole.
When I hear when I hear something exciting, you think about the possibilities. But ultimately, there are tons of people that don't understand what those possibilities are, or as we like to say, the arc of the possible, right? So that's one of the things we're here to do today, and throughout all of our podcasts, is show you possibilities and where things can go, whether you're an investor or a developer or a product person. Now, to answer that question, it's a little bit of an open-ended question, Matt, in the sense that whatever, you're only limited by your creativity at one point, at some point, and the immediate uses, I think, will be DeFi, right? They'll start to open up marketplaces, but ultimately, what they're doing is, because it is the Saga or Solana OS, if you will, it will usher in a whole sort of DeFi applications. They're developing a community or fostering a community that contributes applications to their marketplace or Web3 marketplace. So that could be anything from geofencing to DeFi to anything else you might think of within that world. So the possibilities are kind of endless. Anything that we're seeing on the protocol level now can be brought to your phone. And frankly, it's it's wonderful to hear this, because it's now a very tangible and acceptable vehicle to connect people that might not have ever thought of getting involved in this world.
What do you think this does for Solana? Do you think this is obviously going to help accelerate development on Solana? It would seem logical.
Yeah, and I think just like end user end consumers, Solana has their strategies as far as whoever's being adopted on their phone, right? It is a first to market kind of situation, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. But they want to adopt a developer community and a community of end users, right? So that's highly important. And when you have a groundswell happening and you start to develop your community, it means they're using the Solana network. It means more protocols and dapps will be developed on their network. And it just means that they're going to be using their tokenomics and their financial systems and developer systems along the way. So it really does bolster, the bigger the community becomes, it bolsters the knowledge or the awareness of Solana, and it also bolsters the idea of what they actually do. Once
Right.
people understand that, I think the floodgates open up. But who knows? There is competitors out there like the HTC Desire, right?
Hmm.
Which is a phone, a Web3 phone dedicated, or kind of they're starting out their journey, catering to the metaverse environment, and that could have profound, imagine having your games and everything else linked to your hardware wallet, or I'm confusing it. It's your phone hardware wallet,
Right.
and have skins and rewards and all sorts of in-game type of purchasing and reward systems right on your phone. That's amazing. The Nothing phone is using the Polygon network, and they're starting their journey through the lens of NFTs. So that's really interesting. And there's a huge community right now that are ready to, jump on something like that. And then there's ethOS, which is, runs almost 100% native crypto applications, or Web3 dapps.
It's such an incredible diversity and such different approaches. Something I wonder is where most of the excitement is going to take place. You were just saying kind of in DeFi specifically, but I wonder if adoption in terms of metaverse, in terms of VR, is where we're going to see a lot of this growth. Because I think if you're a developer right now and you're looking at all these new opportunities, you're thinking there's going to be a lot of new consumers of crypto, of blockchain, and of decentralized apps. You're thinking, where should I be developing first? Where's the action at, I guess? I don't know what your thoughts would be on that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and to each their own. But I would say, just from our collective knowledge and working in the space with really, really interesting companies that do a lot of things in Web3, they have decided themselves to focus on DeFi. It is really it is the biggest problem for new technologies and technology development companies to solve, right? So once you open that up, you can start to monetize and put smart contracts towards anything that's fiscal.
Yeah, I guess keeping a foot in
And
the real world is sort of where it's at, right? Using the mobile device to be able to access these transactions in a way that you never have before.
yeah, I mean, so if you asked me where I would start, it would, and I had an option to create some really cool socialized or decentralized social game platform, or in tandem, probably would have to start to decide on what type of monetization models we'd be building with it. Um, you know, Probably most people will jump towards the DeFi end of things and figuring out that issue right off the bat. But certainly, you were seeing some of these other companies really put their foot forward into the metaverse, and subsequently, AR VR experiences, and NFTs. NFTs have a DeFi component technically. They have their own economics that you can kind of build and tailor based on your needs. But I definitely see the DeFi end of things being the first to be exploited.
I think something that's going to be so interesting is when you look at this Solana phone. So just kind of looking through some of its feature sets, you have the mobile wallet adapter. It's a protocol for connecting web apps and native Android apps to wallets on mobile devices. Open source protocol, so it'll support all mobile platforms, not just Android. At least that's the idea. And then you get into Seed Vault. So it's an environment built into a mobile device, trying to, keep your private keys, making sure everything's secure. And then you get into, obviously, Solana Pay. So it's a typical, what we sort of imagine crypto in the conventional sense, like that payment system. And then I think what excites me the most, you get into the dApp Store, which is going to seamlessly integrate with the Android App Store. So you'll basically be able to, to me, I think that's the part where when I talk to people, that's where it's most confusing. because getting a wallet, setting everything up, all the steps involved to just get a dApp seems to be such a massive climb. And if it's literally as easy as just, downloading your favorite Angry Birds game or whatever, I don't know if that's outdated, but that same concept, it's such a game changer here.
Yeah, it's a great point, Matt. And one of the biggest things you've highlighted, one of the biggest issues in the industry right now is onboarding, adoption. How do you get your mom and dad on, your aunt and uncle, who are different generations, different thought processes, and different tolerances for learning how to navigate new technologies, right? So it's all going to be done. And I think, getting back to our current topic here of kind of these DApp enabled or Web3 enabled phones, that's going to be the most immediate way they can do it. Most people are more comfortable with their phones than their own, laptops or desktops at this point. And it gets into something that's near and dear to us, right? It's design, it's user experience, right? It's the first thing I always hear is, well, the onboarding process is not that great. Well, I truly believe Solana and their team, and subsequently teams like Arc, who are helping protocols with these very issues, will be building these experiences so that they're one click, two click, or taps. And super easy to get on board using converting fiat money quickly. So maybe it's just setting up a credit card to bring in information. That information is converted, or that monies or fiat currency is converted into Sol or any other cryptocurrencies you're going to be using. And then, instantly, you don't even have to ask where the wallet is. It's just in your phone. It's there. And then from there, you'll have almost like micro experiences within your wallet. And those wallets will become more sophisticated over time. But I think that's the whole thing for getting a really good groundswell. I think that's what we need to do, is focus on the onboarding experience and the conversion experience from a normie to a crypto native, if you will, satisfying everyone's need for simplicity. I think that's the first step.
I think we were talking about this earlier too before we started, but what I'm curious to see how when Apple, or granted this is on Android, this particular phone, but when these major these iOS and mobile operating systems are looking at this direction, I wonder what their reaction is, if they're thinking we'd better jump in on this, we don't want to miss the boat, or if there's still a degree of resistance. Obviously, if you look at a model from Apple, its App Store is such an extremely profitable walled garden, earning a significant percentage on every single developer. And this direction really is, at its highest level, it's giving full power to the developers and the users, and whatever arrangement is decided between them, so be it. But it's eliminating that middleman. It's a very, very powerful economics question, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the nature of that's one of the biggest reasons why cryptocurrencies were born, like created, was to alleviate any distrust and middlemen. And there are plenty of middlemen in between every transaction you make with your credit cards. There's lots of hands out, and subsequently, misuse of funds and or information. With that said, I think the important part here is to note that no matter what happens with all these phones that are coming out, or Web3 enabled phones from Solana, HTC, nothing, it's going to light a fire underneath the Apples, the Googles, the Amazons of the world. People are, one of the most beautiful things about Web3 and the Web3 community is that I've seen is if there are giants in your way, there there's a group of people that are just dying to figure out how to navigate around them or over them or through them. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that, most people, and this is where ARC and this podcast is shining a light on is, well, you really can't see the Web3 technology right now because it's not in front of your face every single day. It is, but most people can't see it. We're exposing that level, and most people don't have access to that level and understand the mechanics and the culture and the community around these developers that are persistent because they know there's a better way. They found the better way already, and they're developing the better way. Now, no matter what happens with all of these various Web3 phones that come out, success, smash hit, major adoption, communities are growing, new forms of marketplaces opening up, which is very exciting. It's still, no matter what happens, it's still going to light a fire under the big boys. And to your point earlier, it's it is like awareness, right? They're aware that this is happening, and maybe they build something, marketplaces and Web3 applications. They open up their walled gardens to these new technologies and new platforms opening up. So Solana, maybe for Solana is like, you know what, you never really thought you'd ever want to get into the hardware game because it's detailed, expensive, and very, very tricky. And that's why we only have a handful of whales out there right now that control the market. But if they, it could be all about adopting their marketplaces into, say, Samsung phones, which I don't see, I see that happening sooner rather than later. It's a win. Samsung's already on board. They're already, Samsung and Google and not so much Samsung, but Google.
I think Samsung had something where they were tinkering with crypto. I don't know the exact details on it, but I was reading about that. They actually have something already. Right. It's very light.
Right.
It's not
but
heavy.
It lights a fire. It shows, wow, they put a lot of time and effort and research into, cultivating their hardware lineups. They don't want to lose that market share, no matter how small it is. So at some point, I think a lot of these, the Solanas, the HTCs of the world will, they're using hardware because they actually have to figure out that problem. There is no, Apple is not figuring that problem. Samsung could be working on it, but they're truly not announcing anything just yet. And any of the other, Huawei's and the other Chinese hardware manufacturers are not pushing in that direction. But what we hope is that we open their eyes with all of this, and we push them to kind of take the next step. And I've always said, once the Amazons and the Googles and the Apples of the world start to open up their walls a little bit, maybe play nicer with the developer community, start to entertain new types of technologies and approaches to finance and trading and marketplaces, that's when you'll get the flood. It'll be a tsunami of interest.
It's an interesting.
That's when the user experience really needs to be dialed in.
What's interesting is I think back to all the major innovations we've seen in recent years, and every time you make a big leap, people are kind of skeptical at first, and they don't know what to do with it, and then developers come in and find these miraculous applications. So when people first saw the iPhone, right, which is effectively what smartphones have been ever since, I mean, really, they were kind of like, oh, neat, I guess I can slightly more effectively check my email. If you remember the browser, it was like a horrific browser. It didn't even have, it wasn't even proper mobile browsing. It was just this weird, you had to scroll in and out at the New York Times or wherever you were reading. And then really over the years, we started seeing types of applications that you could have never envisioned. And by the time the iPad came out, wasn't it funny? People again said, well, why do I need this device? I already have a computer and I have an iPhone. This is a stupid middle device. But then the iPad in its own right had endless applications for artists and for showcasing different, rooms and architecture. It has its entire, no one would argue that an iPad is a unique device in its own right. So I think what's so interesting here is to think people are saying, well, why do I need dapps? Why would I need a decentralized app? But once a developer gets in there and starts imagining how it could improve your life, how these could be different, the game changes, and it never does go back. Whether these projects succeed, like you said, or not, once that box has been opened, there's no closing it.
Absolutely, and I think it's just a matter of people getting their hands on these applications and playing with them and saying, well, technically, there's nothing really, what's different between this Web3 dApp and the traditional, traditional Web 2.0 app? Well, not a heck of a lot, but when you look underneath it, there's a tremendous amount that's different, meaning it creates a trusted and encrypted connection between you and your audience, or you and the brands and or services you're interacting with. And once you see Web3, you know that, okay, it's working off validation nodes to validate this information. Plus, it's working with content, your information, and your keys to whatever networks you're interfacing with at that particular moment. And it's all locked down and trusted. It's full custody of your data, your information, your keys. And I think I love referring to some of these new hardware products or phones as, hardware wallets, because really that's what it is. Your phone is turning into that anyways. We swipe to get into the subways with our phones. We swipe to pay with our phones. Now it's just going to go even, like, give you more custody, meaning that New York City subway app that you use, or to buy train tickets or whatever, it's out of your control. They take your credit card and that's it. We know that story. We know how that story ends. Now it's about, giving people options to use various means of payment that they do have more control over and they do have custody over. And then it's about also giving people control over their digital assets, whether it be an in-game asset, an NFT, which pretty much, everything will be a form of NFT at some point. Giving you control over it to trade, swap, show, whatever you want to do. You could have medical records in your phone, your driver's license, your validated work history. So the applications are endless, really.
I think that's a great point, because that seems like a lot of people don't fully understand how little of your own content you actually own when you read terms and agreements with a lot of different apps. Or I remember this was a big thing when, now we're moving more into Spotify and streaming land, but back when you would buy music from Apple by the song, people were shocked that they didn't actually own the songs. If you remember those lawsuits, there's always these terms of agreements. And if we're moving toward a true ownership Web3, there will be no dispute. When you buy something, you've actually owned that asset, be it the app, be it some components or some expansion on the app, or like an NFT, like you're saying, a smart contract or an asset. So it's a completely revolutionary. It's creating like land in the digital frontier.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. Yeah, there's the kind of the land, analogy. But what really interests me, and we need to read up on this a little bit more. But the idea of having your entire social profile in one place. So rather than you going to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, you can't count them off, however many social networks are out there, they gate your information You have to log in to get that information. What if you just had one profile that you can share with different networks when you want it and how you want it? That's really interesting. That's now taking back your social identity a little bit more. And then subsequently, better controls over your data, over your identity and how it's used is put into place over time.
Well, that seems like the ultimate holy grail in this whole thing. Really, is that central profile, everything being completely centralized for yourself, not by someone else, but for yourself.
Yeah.
Just a side note, I want to mention now that since we were talking about the Nothing phone, is that a phone you're going to buy? Because that looks like such a badass phone. I just think it looks so awesome. I was looking at it. It's so dorky, but I just love it with the lights and everything. It just looks so cool. You have these unusual phone developers, these new phone developers coming in.
Oh yeah, and yeah, just a side note about the Nothing product. They started with earbuds, and now they went to the phone. I kind of knew as soon as I saw some of their kind of consumer products that they're starting to develop with the earbuds. That and the price point was great on them. They weren't for me because I have different needs and different quality levels I like with my audio equipment. Um, but it is a phone that looks really amazing, and it was created in partnership with Teenage Engineering. And Teenage Engineering is a little bit near and dear to my heart because they create modular synthesis tools and applications, or hardware, really. Really slick, very DTRAMs looking, hyper simple, minimalist design, and but had a really beautiful industrial design edge to it. All of their products, they subsequently helped Nothing with their earbuds, and then you can absolutely see Teenage Engineering's influence in that phone. So from a hardware standpoint and a visual standpoint, I really like the phone. But I would say I'm leaning towards the Solana Saga phone
Right.
a little bit more, because I just really like where they're starting.
Well, you want to
You
get your
know,
hands dirty on that functionality, that really revolutionary functionality, whereas Nothing phone seems to be maybe giving a little bit of a nod to blockchain potential, but it's not really the core function of the phone. It's kind of like a little side thing
yeah.
versus
I
yeah.
mean, who knows where they take these phones? But I think just after hearing the heads of the labs, the Solana labs talk about the product, the types of dapps that they're going to be producing, the kind of the SDKs that they're going to be building for developers for Web3. I just think well, right now I think their head is in the right space. They're paying attention to the developer community. They're catering a little bit more to them, and at the end of the day, that I don't care how sexy the phone is, that's what's going to sell the phone. That's what's going to drive adoption. And the adoption curve, which is, we can see it almost in every technological revolution, if you will, or transformation, is you always start with the developer community.
Hmm.
If they really find that this is going to benefit them and the community and humans as a whole, they're going to want to be a part of that project. So I think it starts there, and then it slowly becomes, then product people start to adopt, and then subsequently, end consumers and whatnot. So there is like this interesting adoption curve will happen. It'll start with the developers, and I think the Solana, I think the way they're communicating and positioning themselves strategically is, I think they're maybe a little bit more ahead of the curve.
I wonder if we're going to see a lot of these phones from the different protocols coming out soon, because it seems like a logical. It seems like such like an arms race almost that's about to begin here.
I again, the hardware universe is really tough. You just talk to people back in the day who've worked for, the big telcos that are no longer around, or the Ericssons, or the Nokias, and it's a very, very difficult environment.
Even Microsoft
Um,
couldn't figure it out, and
yeah,
that's a big one.
Microsoft had I believe they still have phones, but they might, I don't know, but yeah, they got beaten up in that world. And it's not, show up with as the big boy in the block and you're going to do fine. It's not like that. You really have to have very innovative angles to get in the good graces of consumers. Um, so yeah, I think it's they're all interesting. They're all they all have their own thing, but I think there are going to be some winners and losers out there over some point. But getting back to your original question, not every protocol will want to do this. Protocols are, they do a job. They're apps. They're dapps. They work within ecosystems like the Cosmos, or the Polygon ecosystem. Um, so the Uber application, or the Uber Solanas and all that, the protocol level will be building the applications. They'll be building the functionality that supports these Polygon, HTC, and Solana phones.
One thing just now that we're talking about it, thinking of the hardware side, I wonder how much the development side is going to inform the kind of hardware we see. I know it goes kind of two ways, but when we think about the smartphone, for example, it's a device that's effectively unchanged for what, like the last 15 years, basically, or more. It's more or less the same screen, the same design, the same format, but it was designed for sort of a Web 1, Web 2 world. And so what I wonder is how the devices themselves could evolve if we're almost entering a time where we'll see form factors that we haven't even imagined yet. Maybe things with facial
I
recognition, or holographic, or it plays more in the background. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think this is something that this phone gets me thinking about that a lot now that we're moving into it.
Yeah, I think this is a great discussion, Matt, because what we're in essence talking about is hardware tends to influence the software that's developed, right? So if Apple puts a LiDAR camera on their phone, and Samsung puts a LiDAR camera on their phone, and that's an expensive piece of hardware to integrate, right? But they're doing it. That opens up a floodgate for people to develop software that supports, design, architecture, photography, whatever, engineering. So you're starting to see a lot of these interesting phone apps that have adapted to the hardware or the LiDAR cameras themselves. Personally, the hardware end of the world, and I think we all know it as end consumers at this point, is there's really nothing super different with the hardware. Most of them, all of the flagship phones share, who's using Snapdragon processors, or the new M chips for Apple,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it may be. The hardware itself is like, okay, the processors are always going to get faster, but the functionality or utility from a hardware standpoint has really not changed. So as an end consumer, you're not locked into an iPhone. Yes, they started most of the revolution, or projected or catapulted the industry, I should say. They didn't start it, but it also it begs the question that now with interesting software, um, perhaps they're going to work closer with the end hardware company, or give feedback or make requests on specific hardware that could really revolutionize the mobile phone industry altogether. So I think of it as ideas that are coming. So if you're building a piece of software that needs a piece of hardware, perhaps they'll communicate to the Solana team or Solana Labs and say, look, let's partner on this. We've got a great idea for the software. We want to help influence your hardware decisions. So I think that's absolutely natural. It does flip everything on its head a little bit, but I think it's a good thing. It's
And
a really
we've
good
seen it.
thing.
And when you think about, like, when you look at with all these personal assistants, Amazon Echo, you look at, basically it's a software innovation at its core, but then it drives this endless version of potential applications. You have Echo in your car, you can have Echo on your kitchen, you can have, there's endless versions of Alexa that can bother you everywhere or track you everywhere. But in a sense, there is this incredible innovation that takes place in both directions. And it does feel like the phone industry specifically, like, in a sense, this, maybe I'm saying this is too big, but I feel like this is one of the biggest, most significant developments with Solana in smartphones, maybe in the past decade. Because the only other thing I can think of is, like you said, speed, improved screens, but more or less the same device, better battery life. And
Cameras.
they got a little bit foldy. You could suddenly fold your phone, but that wasn't like that really didn't change your life that much, Okay, it's kind of a neat, and it's a neat trick, but no one really found a way developmentally to make that, to justify the utility of it just yet, other than a slightly bigger screen again.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And that's why we're excited about talking about this, right? Because it is the most profound, I think, in the past decade, for sure, or plus, I should say, to hit the mobile hardware and software industries. It is profound, but the reason why I'm more excited over that is it's really it's opening a very welcoming door to a lot of people, and it's going to open the doors for product people, engineers, consumers. It's going to open up their minds creatively to say, wow, now there's so much more possible. We can't wait. And I think the idea that from a 40,000 foot view, it is going to drive much more excitement in the mobile industry, and subsequently to the end consumer.
What do you think, just from an ARC perspective? When you're looking at emerging technology companies and you're thinking, maybe they're listening to this and they're getting excited about the potential, what would you advise them? Where should they be looking? How should they be looking to capitalize on this? Maybe they are a Web3 company. Maybe they are just getting familiar with Web3 at a very entry level. What should they be thinking about? Where should they be going? Where should they be potentially putting resources?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question for a lot of companies, whether you kind of like, I kind of know about this, or you're kind of knee deep in Web3. We like to say, like, it kind of takes a village, right? Especially now, because we're so low on the adoption curve. We're so in the grand scheme of things, we're just scratching the surface with all of this, right? And that's the exciting part. But what I would say is, don't get overwhelmed. There are people like us who could operate on a consultative level or an actual build and design level to help you through this. Podcasts like this, tune in every single day. Whenever you hear this, there's a lot of great people out there talking about the technology. We're what we're doing here is helping end consumers, product people, and Web3 businesses imagine the possible, right? We want to show you what's happening. Ask us our thoughts. That's what we want. Join the dialogue. Get on our Discord server. Get on multiple Discord servers. Start to understand the environment a little bit better, and understand the power and the reasoning behind cryptography and cryptocurrencies and the blockchain in general, and subsequent applications that are being developed.
I think that's a great note for us to wrap up on. And I think this is something I kind of want to ask you this in this podcast at the end of every episode. But if we took our whole conversation just now, and for people, again, who are just either they're new to this or they know the world, if you could boil it down to like 2 or 3 takeaways, what do you hope people are thinking about right now based on what we've seen? This is some significant news for Web3. and for crypto and for blockchain. But what would be the maybe like 2 or 3 major takeaways you hope people walk away with as they look at these new developments in mobile and in dapps and in really mass adoption in a way we maybe haven't seen before?
Yeah. What I would say, just a couple of points, is that, you know, what really is exciting about this conversation is that we are having a conversation about mobile and mobile being affected. Because like I said, it's going to be one of the biggest gateways for onboarding much more, bigger communities, whether it be developers or end users. It is going to be the vehicle for it. And what I would say is, also, you're going to start to see applications come to life, I think, a lot quicker on the mobile phone, because it truly is. And now there is actually, forget about the hardware. They're creating a marketplace for every, average Joe and Jane to get involved in, or play with. Now you can just play with it, see if you like it. Before, there was not many vehicles outside of being a hardcore developer, to kind of dig yourself in. I'm excited about the accessibility of new apps and dapps. That's what really gets me charged up with this news. And it's something that we'll be following for a long time. So please tune in week after week. We're going to be talking about this and many other topics. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And of course, always be sure to tune in to our Discord channel. That's where the conversation is always continuing. And then, of course, you can learn more about us at arctai.com. Am I leaving anything out? I think those are the 2 main ones.
No, that's great.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.